Every 40 seconds, an American child goes missing. Every year, 840,000 children go missing in the United States, with some forced into trafficking. While many missing children are located within 24 hours, others are never found. Primetime television offers an ideal medium to present cases of children gone missing to the widest available audience. Kidnapping and human trafficking are federal offenses, so a program like A Place Called Home would be an asset for federal law enforcement agencies to notify a national audience about children who have gone missing. A Place Called Home will present missing child cases in both a documentary and docudrama format. The program reports on the brass tacks of the investigation by presenting reenactments of abductions and interviews with law enforcement authorities. To examine the pathos of the cases, interviews with parents and other relations will explore the emotional impact such crimes make on families. Missing children need our help, and A Place Called Home is the ultimate Amber Alert. As the producer and host of A Place Called Home, I am raising funds to finance the pilot. In order to present this work in its best possible light, we need production value. In other words, I can't just shoot it with a smartphone. The goal of my production company, Leader One Studios, is to raise $10,000 for the budget, so that networks will see it as a serious work and will be convinced that we are serious about finding missing children. Please donate to the show's Patreon fund at www.patreon.com/leader1. See the link below. Any amount will be appreciated, and you will save lives. Child victims of kidnapping and human trafficking await our efforts to broadcast their plight on a national stage. A Place Called Home, bringing the quest to find missing children to primetime television. Thank you in advance for your support. Hey, you soldiers, just giving you a little preamble. I had a seizure the other day. When you have a seizure, you bite your tongue really hard, and it ends up being really sore, makes it a little difficult to speak. So if I mispronounce things or I kind of trip over a word a little bit here and there, I'm not doing it to ruin your entire life. It's a medical condition that I did not choose. So please, if you're unhappy about the way I pronounce a word, find it in your heart to forgive me. Now on to the show. Welcome to Human Monsters. For decades now, the iconic beauty, Demi Moore, has graced the silver screen with unforgettable performances. She has a classic kind of exquisiteness that is timeless and eloquence that is timeless. She has been the face on the front page of a million tabloids, newspapers, and magazines, but in my view, there is one that stands out ahead and shoulders above the rest. In 1991, Demi agreed to be on the cover of the legendary Vanity Fair magazine, but this was no ordinary photo shoot. For one thing, Demi was 7 months pregnant with her second child, Scout Willis. Another difference was that Demi would be photographed naked. The image that resulted from that photo shoot is one of the most memorable Vanity Fair had ever published. With her one hand over her breasts, she sits sideways and stares into the camera as the baby bump in front of her is exposed in full glory. Demi thought they would not publish this photo, especially on the front page, but they did. To her, it was a celebration of womanhood, motherhood, and pregnancy, and she wanted to share and show it to the world in all its unabashed glory. The front page image provoked many critics, but in many other women, being pregnant was suddenly not a thing to hide or be embarrassed about. Only a half a century ago, women were encouraged to hide their pregnancy and were ordered to stay at home and out of public view. People acted as if they did not know where they came from, nor that the fetus cocooned inside a perfectly natural incubator was not a miracle in itself that should be admired and glorified. I am going to assume that most of you know where babies come from, and in the creation of life, it's actually the really fun part. If you don't know how procreation happens, you are too young to listen to this podcast, and you need to go sit down with a parent and have a talk about the birds and the bees and try not to laugh. In this episode, we will focus on pregnancy, birth, and the aftermath, and after birth. I believe that the creation of a life with a soul and endless possibilities in a woman's womb is a magical marvel, but many women and unfortunately teenage girls find pregnancy and giving birth daunting and challenging. Pregnancy causes nausea, pain, discomfort, and then there is the hurricane of hormones that cause the most logical woman to turn into a forgetful or moody or just plain emotional mess. There is also the endless pressure on the bladder, backache, swollen limbs, the baby kicking and elbowing organs as it grows, strange food cravings like when my mother kept craving burnt toast with ketchup, or my cousin kept craving Dairy Queen. There's the moves and turns of the fetus inside you, the heartburn that never seems to subside, constant fatigue, stretch marks, and ever-looming fear and hope that the child is normal to contend with. But that is only if you are lucky and your situation affords you the ability to enjoy this part of your life with proper medical care and a firm support structure. Granted, not all women experience pregnancy the same, but I believe all would agree that it all culminates into an experience that is painful, traumatic, and messy, all to deliver a tiny human being into the world that will hopefully change it for the better. For those of you who are not familiar with the reproductive system of a woman while giving birth, get ready to be educated and be warned that you might not look at your mother the same the next time you see her. The process I am about to explain in the best and briefest way possible is only relative to a completely normal birth, meaning no breaching of the baby, or if there is, for instance, an umbilical cord wrapped around its neck, like in my case. It usually begins with a little discharge, back pain, and then contractions. This pain, often described as the worst period pain ever, only increases in intensity as the time between contractions grow less and less. The pelvic bone dislocates to make way for the birth, and believe me when I say there will be tearing no matter how much a woman dilates. Contractions during labor can last as long as a couple of days, but there are documented cases where a woman has been in labor for as long as 2 months. All the female body wants is to expel the child, but the woman is not allowed to push until she has been given permission by a midwife or a doctor. The delivery is a messy affair, with blood and mucus exiting the body as the baby pushes through the vagina. Or in the case of one woman I knew, the baby was late and the womb was filled with feces because the baby had begun to expel it. Don't worry, boys, it does eventually shrink back, but not after bleeding for about 3 months. The woman is, however, not done. Now she has to deliver the afterbirth, which is birth in itself. This is just a brief rundown of what happens. But even in this one paragraph, it's clear that nature, no matter how wonderful, can be a very, very cruel mistress. If you think hours of labor is not the worst of it, just wait. Anyone who tells me that a newborn baby is beautiful, I will call a liar. Personally, I compare a newborn to a huge pink pale raisin, or an elderly alien covered with wrinkles. This little person, who is completely helpless and dependent on his or her mother, then emits a cry that will only grow louder as they grow older. Fortunately, within a couple of days, the baby will grow more into its skin and a personality forms. There is also now the constant feedings with only 2 or 3 hours sleep, nappy changes that sometimes want to make you puke, raw nipples from breastfeeding, as well as everything else it takes to look after a baby. For at least the first 3 months, all you do as caregiver is to try to keep a little human being alive. Despite all the negative aspects I've just mentioned, there is no love on this earth stronger than a mother for her child. And if you are lucky enough to experience it, thank your lucky stars, because you are in the minority. Many women, out of pure desperation, are unable to see a future with the infant in it. Though there will be one, especially when she becomes a teenager with an attitude, who dates a guy who's the lead singer of a band called Painel. It is impossible to say how many women did not plan their pregnancies. Birth control is not always effective, and women often fall pregnant not by their own choice. Once a woman is aware that she is pregnant and she can't or doesn't want to keep it, there are really very few options left. I continue to call the person who is pregnant a woman, but the truth is that teenage pregnancies are an increasing concern in all countries and in sectors of society. There's even an episode of the Dr. Phil show where an 11-year-old girl became pregnant. You can really see how the turmoil affects that family. The youngest girl was 5 years and 9 months old, which is as shocking and disgusting a statistic as I've ever encountered. Her father was suspected of being the father, but this was never proven. For obvious reasons, her privacy is paramount, but I can only hope that whoever raped her got what they had coming to them. I have no doubt a child can raise a child successfully, but if the situation is not close to perfect, odds of both mother and baby being able to live up to their full potential and for problems to not only derail the baby's development, but perhaps even damage it permanently, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Human Monsters listeners have by now consumed enough true crime to know how that sometimes has a ripple effect. As I mentioned before, options, if the mother does not want to keep the baby, are very few. There are different types of adoptions, which allows the mother to choose her contact with her baby, if she wants a clean break. Then there is abortion, but many countries don't allow the procedure, which sadly results in backstreet abortions, which not only can cause serious infections and damage with long-term effects, but it could also cause the death of the mother. Another reason is the mother might not be able to afford the baby. They are too young to be a mother. The environment at home is not suitable to raise a baby. They don't feel a strong connection with the baby, or the baby has special needs the mother is not able to meet. Some find single parenting too daunting, or they find the support system too unstable. The baby might be the result of sexual assault or incest, and some women want to rather focus on their own future and give their baby a good chance at a better tomorrow. It's an incredibly selfless act to offer an infant adoption, and on the surface it appears to be the most logical solution, especially since hundreds of women all over the world yearn for a child but are unable to conceive. A third option is abandonment. Hospitals and churches often have a no questions asked policy if a baby is left in their premises. The last option is, however, murder or infanticide, which is what today's episode will be exploring. Infanticide is an act that directly violates the right to life. The unspeakable act has been committed all over the world since the beginning of time, as well as surprisingly recently. The definition of infanticide is the deliberate killing of a child under the age of 1 year old. A subdivision of this form of murder is called neonaticide, which means the killing of an infant within 24 hours of its birth. This appears to be a crime that happens across the world, but especially the United States of America. Sadly, too often a janitor will follow a blood trail down a hallway just to find a rubbish bin heavy with the remains of a newborn baby. Almost 90% of women who commit neonaticide are under the age of 25 and kill their children by head trauma, drowning, suffocation, or strangulation, all acts of murder committed with their bare hands and no weapons. Infanticide and neonaticide are two actions that are common in the animal kingdom. But humans have common sense, free will, and logic that should allow them to make better decisions. In some countries, a child is not seen as a human before certain rituals are performed, and therefore the act of killing is not seen as murder. To gather statistics regarding infanticide is almost impossible, because most babies who befall this awful fate are not registered in government records. There are different types of infanticide. Direct or active infanticide is the act of deliberately killing the baby by means of suffocation, head injuries, dehydration, or even starvation. Inactive or passive infanticide begins with inadequate nutrition, neglect, or not giving the infant medical care when it is required. In many countries, infanticide was used to control the population. Female infants were killed in much larger quantities, mostly because, especially in the past, it would mean that there would be less women to reproduce. Another factor to consider is the fact that many families prefer male children, since female children would eventually leave the home and join other families, and the male child will continue the family name and legacy. The male child is therefore seen as more valuable than the female. Another factor is stern and strong moral or religious beliefs, where an illegitimate child brings shame on the family. One of the first recorded cases of infanticide is child sacrifice. Perpetrators believe that offering a baby or young child could affect the supernatural and bring prosperity. Recently, a grave with almost 3,000 bones of infants was discovered in Sardinia. These victims were all believed to be the sacrifice to a god or a deity. Babies who were unwanted were also left outside to succumb to the elements, starvation, thirst, or scavenging wildlife. Some societies still commit infanticide based on beliefs derived from children with magical effects or evil spells that are attributed to a defect. This is also applicable to children born in the equator who are born with albinism or born twins. In the case of the latter, sometimes only the youngest of the two is either killed or given to another family to raise. When the United Nations recently conducted a study regarding violence against children in India, it was discovered that out of the 1,000 women interviewed, 43% of babies who died at birth were as a result of infanticide. Once again, the large majority of infants murdered were female, which is a theme we will see over and over again. In fact, when ultrasound technology was introduced to India, there was a sudden spike in the infanticidal deaths of female babies. China has always been concerned with their population growth, and in September 1980, the one-child law was introduced to families of the country. The government even offered financial incentives for families with only one child. This law was finally made away with in 2016, but I have to wonder how many babies were murdered during those 37 years of its existence. One option for couples in the West who were unable to conceive was to adopt a girl from China during those years. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you about cases of neonaticide that shook the world once it was revealed. I cannot find any cases that had a similar theory in any other country than the United States. I have no doubt it does occur and that the information is not as readily available. Even though I dug like a gravedigger to get facts on these cases, I could only find the scraps the internet allowed me to have. 1. Melissa Drexler. At the time of the crime, Melissa Drexler was the 18-year-old only child of middle-class parents living in Lacey Township in Fort River, which is about an hour away from New York City on the Jersey Shore. She was born on the 10th of July, 1978, to parents Mary and John, who were respectively a bank clerk and a shipping official. Melissa is described as a shy, quiet girl next door and a diligent student. She loved to draw and had a keen interest in pursuing a career in fashion. She was taking fashion merchandising classes at a vocational school, and it's safe to say she had aspirations of becoming a big designer and rocking the ramps of Paris and Milan. She was born and raised a Catholic, and according to sources, did attend Mass, but not on a regular basis. In a nutshell, this was a very ordinary family with a very ordinary daughter. Melissa had a boyfriend of about 2 years, and the two were looking forward to attending the senior prom at Lacey Township High School. Their relationship is described as a little rocky, and over a period of 2 years, the two often broke up. John was 2 years older and had been employed at Walmart. She had a very small group of friends, loved club music, and worked part-time at a retail store on the beach. After school, Melissa would spend time with John, and in a tale as old as time, hormones rushed in as all lectures about sex were forgotten by this meek and mild girl, and Melissa would lose her virginity to John. It's estimated that she fell pregnant either during September or October 1996. Friends would later reveal that John would tell them about a pregnancy scare he and Melissa had had that November, but that it was a false alarm and all was well. As time ticked over month after month, Melissa would wear very baggy shirts and pants. Not even John had a clue that she was pregnant, and before you shout at the speaker, "But how?" let me enlighten you. Many an ass has been made out of a person who assumed that a woman is pregnant just to be told that she is just fat or has a food baby. Not all women carry the baby in the same way, and many might only start showing in the last trimester. She had gone shopping only a month before the birth with her best friend, Rebecca, for prom dresses, and neither she nor her mother saw anything out of the ordinary. Melissa was 5'7" and weighed 130 pounds, and despite the expansion of her girth, her legs and face remained the same. The senior prom was held on the 6th of June, 1997, in a banquet hall in Aberdeen, which was about 45 minutes from where they lived. For the occasion, Melissa wore a black sleeveless velvet dress and her hair in an updo. She and John arrived at the venue in a limousine with another couple. Something was off with her, but when her friend asked her what was wrong, she told them that she just had bad cramps. The moment the two couples arrived at the prom, Melissa would make a desperate dash for the ladies' room. As any woman will tell you, when it's time for the baby to come, there is really very little you can do, especially after the water has broken, which had happened in the morning that day. There was no denying it. Melissa was in the late stages of labor, and her delivery room would be a public toilet. Other students would later report hearing strange sounds coming from the toilet stall and seeing blood near the door. After giving birth, Melissa used the sharp edge of a metallic dustbin to cut off the umbilical cord. She would later confess that the baby was still alive and that she had suffocated it before wrapping it into a couple of rubbish bags and depositing her newborn in the bin. When Rebecca came to inquire if her bestie was okay because she was taking so long, she would tell her best friend that she was almost finished and would be joining everyone at the table in a moment. She cleaned up as much as possible, fixed her makeup, and left the ablution and her baby behind. The entire delivery was estimated to have taken about 20 minutes in total. After giving birth in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable, Melissa went back to the table they were assigned to and started to nibble on a salad. She then requested the song The Unforgiven by the band Metallica, to which she and John shared a dance. If you are not familiar with the lyrics, have a listen and tell me if they haunt you as much as it did me. Students had, however, began to report these strange sounds and blood in the bathroom, and a cleaning lady was asked to clean up the mess. Melissa was fingered as the only person in the bathroom when the odd experiences of girls was reported. But when a chaperone asked her if anything was wrong, she said it was nothing to worry about. She was just experiencing a very heavy period. As she picked up the dustbin bag in the bin, she felt that the bag was heavy and decided to investigate the source for the unusual weight. As soon as the baby was discovered, the police and EMTs were contacted. Melissa was called back and, knowing the jig was up, confessed to having had her baby in the bathroom. Emergency personnel tried for more than an hour to revive the baby, but to no avail. All during the confession and even later in court, everyone would comment on her flat affect, but she had clearly dissociated herself so much from the pregnancy that it is not surprising. She had never had to make a decision for herself. Her parents provided her with a car, filled it up with gas, and Melissa hardly had a care in the world. Some would note that she had suffered from a form of arrested development, since she almost never had to take responsibility for anything in her life. It must have been quite a shock then when she was arrested on the 24th of June for the murder of her baby, but her parents were able to get her out on a $50,000 bond. The young woman was indicted in September of the same year for the murder of her baby. Melissa was sent for a psychological evaluation, but nothing was determined to be wrong with her psyche. She also had shown no signs of any struggle with mental illness before the birth of the baby. This case gained traction in an unbelievable manner, and Melissa was referred to as the prom mom from this point on. When the story broke, it not only caught fire as newspaper headlines locally, it became a topic of discussion across the world, and the outrage was palpable, with sharp daggers of condemnation being thrown at Melissa and judgment at her parents. Television shows such as The Family Man and Saturday Night Live entertained audiences with parodies with names like Prom Mom, Dumpster Baby. The prosecutor made the statement that the state was not going to ask for the death penalty, but it did not seem likely that this was ever an option. As the outrage died down, it seemed that, if found guilty, she would spend between 10 and 30 years behind bars. The prosecutor maintained that the baby was born alive and had a pathologist to state as such under oath. The defense hired world-renowned Dr. Michael Barton, who also testified during the O.J. Simpson trial, to counter this statement. According to the good doctor, the air in the baby's lungs and intestines was as a result of the EMT's effort to do CPR, and therefore not an indication that the baby was born alive. In the end, the trial had taken its toll, and Melissa decided to plead guilty on a charge of aggravated manslaughter. As always, when a defendant accepts a plea, they have to confess and tell the court exactly what they had done. With her lawyer beside her, a very muted Melissa read her statement in the same monotone voice she had used from the beginning. She admitted that the baby was born alive and that she had purposefully suffocated it. The judge was not moved and gave her 15 years prison time for the crime. The body of the baby, who weighed 6 pounds at birth, was given to Melissa's parents. The little boy, whom Melissa named Christopher, was laid to rest. She kept her nose clean while in prison and did courses in fashion design, as well as finished obtaining her high school diploma. Melissa would end up spending a total of 3 years in prison, and then she would completely vanish from the public world. Some sources indicated that she did get married and she had children, but these could not be verified. 2. Amy Grossberg. When you fall in love for the first time, it's one of the most exciting, sometimes confusing, and exhilarating experiences two young people can have. Most of us look back upon it with shy embarrassment and fondness, going so far as to look up the first guy or girl who made our hearts flutter on Facebook years later, just to peek at how their lives turned out. For Amy Grossberg and Brian Peterson, what began as the perfect romance would turn into a legal and public nightmare. Amy Grossberg and Brian Peterson were described by those who knew them as the perfect couple, with both coming from affluent and stable homes. Friends described them as good kids. The two met at the Rapeo High School and were absolutely smitten with each other. They lived in New Jersey, in the kind of communities known for golf courses and million-dollar homes. She was an only child, and he was one of 5 siblings. She excelled in art and French, and he was a jock who was captain of the golf team and captain of the soccer team. Amy's father was a very successful businessman, and her mother was an interior decorator. Brian's parents ran a successful video rental business. They were popular and, according to all, an ideal match. At the end of their final year, they decided to continue the relationship, with Brian making the trip to Delaware, where she was studying very regularly. She must have been 6 months pregnant when she started college. When Amy discovered she was pregnant, she immediately told Brian. The two made the decision not to tell anyone about the pregnancy because they did not want to disappoint their families, who had anticipated big plans for the two's future. Amy carried small, and she was able to wear tight clothes till deep into the pregnancy, although some did wonder but were too polite to inquire. None of her friends or family seemed to notice anything at home. Amy was 5 feet tall and wore a size 1 shoe, so it's difficult to believe no one saw anything wrong. It was, however, clear that she made no attempt at hiding the pregnancy on campus. Both Brian and Amy were well adjusted, never missing classes, and not getting into trouble. The problem did arise when Amy's mom wanted to come to the college homecoming dance, which would happen a month before she gave birth. Amy lied and told her that she would not be on campus. The truth would come out soon enough. Amy had gone into labor at 12:45 on the 12th of November, 1996, in her freshman dorm. She did not understand what was happening, was terrified, and she knew she could not go to the hospital because her and Brian's choice to hide the pregnancy would come to light, and both the authorities, and especially her mother, would have a lot of questions. The 18-year-old called Brian in his dorm room in Gettysburg and told him that her stomach hurt and that she believed she was in labor. He made the trip, which took about 3 hours, in his black Toyota Celica to assist his girlfriend with the birth. The two booked into a room at about 3 a.m. in the Comfort Motel, for which they paid $52. What happened during the birth is not known. We do, however, know that a healthy baby boy, 28 inches long and 6 pounds and 2 ounces, was delivered just before sunrise. The couple then returned to Amy's dorm room, where they slept for hours. Brian would later admit to authorities that he took the baby, wrapped it in a plastic bag, and threw it in the dumpster behind the motel. He and Amy then decided to go back to their colleges, but not before stopping at a car wash to clean the interior. Both must have, in a way, wished that all that happened that morning was just a bad dream and that they would be able to continue with their lives as before. No one at the dorm even suspected Amy had given birth. Her body seemed normal, but later that day she began complaining of terrible stomach pains. She had turned very pale, and blood was gushing from her groin area. An ambulance was summoned, and once at the hospital, it was discovered that the placenta, or afterbirth, was still inside her, which caused complications. She finally broke down and told doctors about the hotel birth and that Brian had assisted her in the birth and getting rid of the baby. The next morning, the baby was discovered in the dumpster, with his skull crushed and with obvious signs of shaking. This would become heavily debated by the defense in the trial that would follow. This case would be viewed as very serious because in 1996, the FBI estimated that 270 children under the age of 1 week were murdered. Bloody sanitary towels and sheets were also discovered in Amy's room. Brian also could not keep the terrible secret to himself. Within hours of returning to his campus, he confessed to a student advisory counselor what he and Amy had done. Police found receipts in his car as well as bloody sheets in his room and took these items into evidence. Brian was originally held by the Pennsylvania police on misdemeanor charges of concealing the death of a baby, but they were forced to release him because the crime was committed in Delaware. As soon as he was released, Brian decided to go on the run. The autopsy was by now ready, and it revealed multiple skull fractures, blunt force trauma, and injuries related to shaking. Amy was released from the hospital after 5 days, and the Delaware police wasted no time in arresting her on first-degree murder. The Attorney General believed that because the victim was under 14 months, the state should ask for the death penalty. There was also much debate about whether both accused should have separate or joint trials. When Brian was informed of this new development, he went even deeper into hiding. As the tabloids feasted on this latest development, the FBI launched a manhunt for Brian. Friends and family continued to defend them, saying that Amy was such a sweet girl and that the two of them looked like Barbie and Ken. Joseph Hurley, Brian's lawyer, tried to soften the narrative surrounding his clients, especially the fact that the state was going to seek the death penalty, by saying his client was not in hiding. He was just in seclusion with his mother, Barbara. Brian did surrender and would stand trial with the mother of his dead child. The charge of murder was eventually reduced to manslaughter, but not before the two former lovers turned on each other. Amy received 30 months in prison, while Brian received 24 months in prison. Amy served 22 months and went on to have a successful life with children. Brian served 20 months, and both he and Amy are said to be good parents to the children they had with other partners. As a result of this case, the New Haven Protection Act was introduced, which states that a mother can drop off her baby anonymously at certain allocated safe places, no questions asked. I was once again reminded that in each case of the killing of another human being, there are circumstances to consider. To end this episode, I would like to quote Dr. Diana Lynn Barnes, a psychotherapist who specializes in maternal mental health, in an article of the magazine Dame. She states the effect of denial is when the mother knows intellectually she is pregnant, but the heightened sensitivity surrounding a pregnancy is absent. The woman does not talk about it. The woman does not relate to the baby as a joyous event, but as a traumatic reminder. In the vast majority, this dissociative state and disconnect dissipates when they go for their first sonogram or when they start to show signs of pregnancy. Pervasive denial, as in the cases above, is when the knowledge of the pregnancy completely vanishes and all signs of pregnancy are ignored. In other words, these women are in denial from which they never awaken. The consequences just seem too terrifying for these women to deal with. If you are a woman who finds yourself pregnant and keeping it is not an option, consider adoption or abortion. Many hospitals, police, and fire stations also have a no questions asked policy. If you have given birth and don't want to keep it, your child does not deserve to come into this world only to end up in a rubbish bin or a dumpster. This episode was written by Misdemeanor. Before I go, I'm going to leave you with a TED Talk by an activist who is trying to put a stop to the practice of infanticide in Ethiopia. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. I'm here to share my story. When I was 15 years old, I saw for the first time Mingi, when one child is killed in my village, in my tribe. And I asked myself, why? Why they killed this child? And I asked my mother, why? And that's the time I start asking myself, why I born in this earth? Why I am here? And I start believing that we all born for a reason. But before I take to my story, I'm going to a little bit explain about my area, Omo Valley. Omo Valley is southwest Ethiopia, 400 miles and 8 different tribes. And these people are pastoralists. They're herding goats and cattle, and they're farming along the river. And one of these tribes is my tribe. And my family is part of this. This is Dus. I was born in this village. And this is my parents' hut. Still, it's like this. There is no any kind of civilization. It's really isolated for many years. And the life there is very difficult. I grew up in this village. I was sleeping in the goat skin and herding goats and herding my father's cattle. So I want to a little bit show how my life journey is. So I was one of these Kara children playing in the dust and playing, going with my father for hunting. And my father taught me how to be strong. Especially my father, always, he's my advisor. And he's pastoralist. He never be in a school. He never know about education means. But he always advised me, Lale, this is really tough area. It's a tough environment. You have to be strong. And always I remember what he told me. To gain respect, you must help the weak and fight the strong. That's my father always telling me. And we go to hunting with my father when I was 7 or 9 years old. We go there, and he showed me how to hunt. When I was 9 years old, the missionaries show up in my village, and they ask for education. Even there is no language in my language education or pen or paper. So they just come and they said, please, can you send your children to school? And which was 65 miles far away from my village. And the missionary just telling the tribes to send their kids, which is far. And my father was there and listening. And he simply believed, he said, I will send my son to school. It's a really big decision. And I went to school, 65 miles, far away, walking, 4 times a year, back and forth. But my school life was difficult. But when I was 15 years old, I came back. What changed my life? What brought me here in front of you is when I was 15 years, I was walking in the village, and I saw for the first time that elders come and grab 2 years old child, and the child was crying, and the mother was crying. I was standing and looking, watching, and the elder's hand is very strong, and they separated the child from the mother, and they ran away to the river. And they told the family not to cry. And I said, I want to find this. And quickly, I went to my mother, and I asked my mother, what's happening to 2 years old child? And my mother doesn't want to tell me. But I pushed her. I said, I want to know. I want to know. And my mother said, Lale, this is a secret. If I tell you, please, could you keep us a secret? I say, yes. Because I want to know that. And then my mother was really uncomfortable to tell me the story. But at the end, she started telling me. She said, Lale, there is a practice called Mingi, means curse. In your tribe and other tribes, 3 tribes practicing this practice. They think some children, when they're born, when the teeth appear in the bottom, they call teeth Mingi. And they drown in the river, they push in the cliff, or they just leave them in the forest, and the wild animals can eat. When the girl is pregnant before the marriage, they declare as Mingi. And Lale, the hard part is when the mothers, carrying for 9 months, they know that child is going to be killed. And then they deliver, and at the end they kill. And the woman Mingi, there is a cultural blessing. If they miss one, still they kill the child. And this is happening. And I was crying, and my mother said, by the way, you have 2 older sisters. Those are killed by Mingi practice. And I was very shocked, and I was crying. And my mother said, don't cry, son. You're going to kill your child, and your friends is going to kill their child. This is your culture. You have to accept. My mother conversation changed my life. And I was not desperate. I was not hopeless. I asked myself, right now, I want everybody to be with me with this spirit. Because I was thinking my sisters, and I asked myself, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to fix this problem. One day I will. And that gives me opportunity to go back to school. Even it's hard or risky, I went to school and I finished my high school. And I asked government, I want to go back to educate my people. I went back, as I said, I'm going to fix this problem. And I went back and I said, for the first time, I stand and I told for my people, for young people especially, before I met the elders, I asked young people, I said, we owe other generation love and care. Not money, not property, love and care. And we have to speak out and say, the Mingi is blessing, not curse. We have to change my people's mind. They are not cruel, they are not savage, they are nice people. They have wonderful culture. But we have to say, this is bad, and we have to separate the culture and change it. And then in 2008, I started the organization, and I saved these kids. As I said, when I was standing talking about love and care, that time those children, they never born. But in this picture, you can see that love and care. I give it them because I owe them. Everyone, you owe other generation. Those two things. I saved 37 children with help of Omo Child and my friend John Rowe and my friend Tyler Moore, all my friends in America. There is a resistance in my tribe. After I saved the children, this child was only fed for 2 weeks, no food. And I told my friends, we have to go. And we went there and we saved. Tinsai, I give new life, resurrection. After that, Tinsai today, she's like that. Thank you, thank you. So after I see that, I said, we have to change. Think about one thing. You have a jacket and a t-shirt. You can't remove the t-shirt before jacket. First, you have to remove the jacket and t-shirt. I asked my elders, let me take the children out of the tribe because you believe it's a curse. Let me take out of the tribe and maybe the curse will follow me because that is a jacket. And then later we say we're going to stop the Mingi. And then in 2012, last year, I discussed with elders and kings. I said, please, let's come to the decision. Give me some solution. So we discussed for 3 months continuously to stop Mingi in my tribe. And at the end, we came to the decision. They say, Lale, we will bring one lamb, and we slaughter the lamb. It's a sacrification, and that will change the things. So we did in 2012, and 6 children living in the tribe, and still another tribe practicing, but my tribe ended in 2012. Now we have 37 children. When I see these children, look at their eyes, I see in these children's eyes my sisters. I'm not regret anymore. They are my sister's spirit in them. And I told my friends, these children represent my sisters. These children represent the new generation, the future generation. Some in school, that's their daily life. This is a lunch, and they go to school. They have additional, like supplementary education. It's really beautiful. And I'm really proud of these children. This is a home that we have, family home that we're operating right now. And this summer I'm with them. And I said one thing when I was with them. I walk. And I said, I prepare these children for the future. They will be one day to come to the TED Talk here and to share their story. That because their story is unique, they have to share that. So I believe in these children. And if you know our organization, please go to the Omo Child and please read about us, know about us. Thank you very much. Thank you.